Somebody hire a cleaner for this real life messy drama. And these are your stories. First one is coming in from Aubrey. I had an ex who was incredibly controlling. Been there. We were dating long distance and he rarely came up to my place. First red flag. Her words, not mine. I had 2 cats and hated leaving them alone for the weekend. I didn't realize how controlling he was until we moved in together less than a year later. I genuinely think he is a high-functioning autistic. Not that everyone who is autistic acts like this, and was never taught to manage it. He always had sports on and far too loud. It was always the Bills football, and if it wasn't that, it was basketball, and if it wasn't that, it was baseball. He wouldn't let me go to bed until he was ready, even though I had to be up 2 or 3 hours earlier than him, and would forcibly tuck the covers over my feet too tight so that my ankles were bent straight. What? That would be so uncomfortable. I would wait for him to fall asleep and then untuck them. He made me cry more than once because I didn't want to wait an hour and a half extra to eat dinner, or because I didn't want to wait an hour and a half for him to get up so we could go run together. Sometimes I would sneak out for a run after work before he got home because he never wanted me to go by myself. I was running over 40 miles a week at the time and was always hungry. Every single thing always had to be his way, or he would whine until he got his way. He called me names whenever I stood up for myself, including bitch. I know that doesn't sound bad. No, that sounds bad. But being called that truly hurts me. My no meant nothing to him. He never SA'd me, but for every little thing, every day, my no was meaningless. What I wanted to eat and when, if I wanted to go to another room to listen to a podcast because he came home and turned on the TV, whether or not we were going to his parents' house again. He tried to physically pull me out of the bed once when I finally went to bed before him because I was exhausted. I wouldn't get out to let him fix the sheets to his liking, and when I fought him off, he finally took my phone, which had my alarm, to get me out of bed. Girl, I see so many red flags here. He would have his mother come clean our shared apartment, and when I told him that was not acceptable to me, he just lied to me and told me he had cleaned. But I knew it was her because of the way that she put things back. He also was just disrespectful to me. One time, he came over and asked for a kiss, and instead spit chewed food into my mouth. Another time, he bent over butt naked and farted in my face. There were so many times that I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to leave my 2 cats alone with him. He also wasn't careful about the windows in the apartment we rented. The screens were never secure, and I never wanted them open fully or if we weren't home. 2 separate times, my cats pushed through the screens because he left windows wide open. I honestly went dead inside. I just went into autopilot and made myself small to fit in his box. Then one day, on a run, I almost got hit by a car. I realized that if I had died, this horrible man would be weeping over my casket as my bereaved lover, and I didn't want that. I didn't want to die on the sword of appeasing Dylan, so I finally got the strength to break up with him. The last time I saw him after we had broken up, but before I fully moved out, I had come back to the apartment to visit my cats and was going to sleep on the couch. I was moving back in with my parents, who live an hour away from where I worked at the time. The apartment was only a 15-minute drive. He came home early and wouldn't stop touching me, so I grabbed my bag and I tried to leave. He blocked the front door, so I went out the back and around the side of the building. He came out the front door to my car, where I had already gotten my bag in the passenger seat. I tried to get in the driver's seat, but he kept pulling my door open. So about 2 or 3 times, I jumped out, pushed him away, and jumped back in and tried to pull the door shut. The 3rd time, I got it shut fast enough, but I had to shut it too hard and the door bounced open. The 4th time, he pulled it again. I swear I saw red. I have never experienced that before. This time, when I tried to shove him away, I heard my whole spine crack like a zipper. It didn't hurt at the time. He was a foot taller than me and at least 50 pounds heavier. When he pulled the door open again for a 5th time, I kicked him in the thigh hard enough to leave a massive bruise, and he finally got the message. I needed chiropractic care for several weeks for compressed vertebrae that were visible on an x-ray. I had something very similar before. My bones were they were supposed to line up like this. They were crossed over. It was horrific. I told them I had hurt my back moving furniture. I came back the next day while he was at work and I got my cats and their stuff. That weekend, I brought my dad and my sister with her dually and we loaded up the rest of my things. The whole time we had been broken up, his mother had been asking to see me. I don't have anything against her and wish I had been able to say a proper goodbye, but I needed to leave this abusive situation. She had wanted Dylan and I to go through and figure out what belonged to who, but we had never truly combined things or bought things together. We still had 2 separate silverware drawers. He did try to keep a book I had lent him by hiding it in with his DVDs, but I tracked it down because it's my favorite. I did lose all of my CDs in The Great Escape, but it was totally worth it. Do not live with someone who forces you to fit yourself in his mold. There is a difference between being a partner and being controlled. I don't think of him often, but when I do, it is with a ringing sense of freedom and relief that I am no longer in that situation. I am now with a man who loves me completely, who accepts me for who I am. He inspires me to bring my best to the table every day. He puts me first in everything he does, and I do the same for him. I'm so in love with him, and if I had stayed in that relationship, I would have missed out on the love of my life. He and I met when we had both loved and lost and were healed and ready for each other. I know you had a reader recently say that no woman is luckier than she is. I remember that because I fought her on that. I said, no, I am. I respect that, but I do have to disagree. I am so thankful for my man every day. And how lucky are we to all be fighting over that? No, I'm the luckiest girl in the world because of how great my man treats me. That's how everyone should feel. Even men, you should feel that same way about your partner and how they treat you because we all deserve that. Next up, we have a story from Jen. Many years ago, I was working in a group home and became friends with a coworker who later invited me and my wife to his daughter's graduation party. We quickly became friends with the whole family. Dad, 3 adult kids, and the mom. We felt like part of the family and we loved spending time with them. I'm an autistic introvert, so I don't make many friends easily, and this set of friendship meant a lot to me. Fast forward a few years and my physical disability started to get much worse. Among other things, a surgeon injured my spinal cord during a neck surgery, and I was left with significant and permanent problems from that, including severe nerve pain. My heart aches knowing one of you, this is your story and you go through this. Because of that and my other conditions, I had several types of chronic pain all at once, overlapping throughout my entire body, and I had severe fatigue worsened by the nerve pain medication I have to take because nothing else works. Between the spinal cord injury, my other back and neck problems, rheumatoid arthritis, and my autism and mental health struggles, I could barely function. I was barely able to get myself to work, and once there, my pain was so severe I was having panic attacks and emotional breakdowns several times during the workday. I couldn't get my work done and couldn't get through a full work shift anymore. I tried so hard to keep working. I was taught a strong work ethic and had learned to be stoic and pull myself up by the bootstraps, but ultimately had no choice but to stop working and apply for disability. Not a month later, my wife decided to drop the bomb that she didn't think she wanted to stay married anymore. She strung me along for 5 months before a couples therapist finally told her she needed to quit stringing me along and make a decision. And her decision was divorce. That is a whole story on its own. We had been together for nearly 15 years, and she decided to cut and run when life got tough. It's what she learned growing up from her mom's multiple divorces. I highly suspect she was cheating on me with her current partner slash fiance, and I think that's the other reason she wanted a divorce. So she's with someone else and engaged to them? It was a long and complicated divorce and was emotionally devastating for me. I had lost my grandma and my cat earlier that year, and then lost my ability to work and support myself, and the person I trusted most decided to abandon me. We had to live together during the divorce for financial and COVID reasons, and it was one of the hardest things I've gone through. Back to the toxic friends. Oh, I didn't know they were toxic. I thought we liked them. I wasn't really getting a whole lot of support from anyone, including the friendship group this story is about. So when the oldest daughter invited me to visit her out of state where she had moved for a teaching job, I happily accepted, even though I was concerned about managing a 5-hour drive. It was a struggle, but I made it safely. There were some smaller, rude / inconsiderate things she did during the trip that I won't go into, but I'll talk about the things that stuck with me the most. The first was taking me to her church. I'm not religious, but I went because she seemed excited to show me her church and have me meet her friends. What she failed to mention was that the sermon was the final installment in a series about marriage. You gotta read the room sometimes. I don't know how I sat through the entire thing. I think now I'd just walk out. There I was, going through a same-sex divorce, listening to a sermon about how important marriage was and how marriage should only be between a man and a woman. My friend didn't say anything, didn't ask if I wanted to leave, didn't try to comfort me, nothing. Not until afterwards when she apologized and said she forgot about the sermon topic. So she knew beforehand and apparently just forgot, which maybe she really did, but how do you forget that your church is homophobic and your friend is queer? I sat in the sanctuary and cried afterwards. She had some of her friends pray for me, which was weird and awkward. The second thing ties into what came later. She was driving us somewhere, this might have been after church, but I'm not 100% sure, and asked me about my disabilities and why I couldn't work. I have a hard time talking about my disabilities, especially when I'm put on the spot, but there's just so much. I have multiple disabilities, and it's just not something that I enjoy talking about. As I've said, I'm pretty stoic, and back then it was a toxic level of stoic, so I generally avoided talking about my health. I managed to rattle off a few things that I thought were relevant, but she apparently didn't think those things were valid enough, which she didn't say at the time, but we'll come back to that later. The third thing happened the day I left. She was helping me pack up my car, and I was struggling to get my winter boots on while she brought a bag out to my car. She left the door open, and her cat decided to take the opportunity to get some fresh winter air. She came in and scolded / yelled at me in her angry teacher voice for leaving the door open, even though she was the one who left it open. And when I tried helping to get the cat back in, she snapped at me and told me to let her deal with it. She eventually got the cat back in and didn't apologize for yelling at me. I left a few minutes later with an icky feeling, wondering if I had done or said something during the visit to upset her, but I couldn't think of anything. That is like one of the worst feelings, when you think someone's mad at you, or it shows like they're mad at you, but you don't know why or what you did. She had even been saying throughout the visit that she hoped I would come again in the summer or fall so we could do some of the things we weren't able to do with it being winter. I told myself maybe she was just crabby and took it out on me, but if that was the case, why wouldn't she apologize? Despite it ending on a sour note, I sent her a message after getting home, thanking her for everything, saying I had fun, and hoped I could come again sometime in the summer. I told her that the drive home was really rough because of pain and fatigue, and said maybe next time I could visit with her dad or sister so I wouldn't have to drive. I didn't get a response back. I messaged her again, I think a few days later, and again, got no response. I messaged her again a couple weeks or so later and asked if everything was okay and if there was anything wrong that I had done, and she responded with a very short message saying she's been busy and didn't say anything else. Meanwhile, I had also not been getting responses from her dad, not even a birthday message that I had sent him. A couple months or so went by and I was increasingly feeling like I must have done something wrong, but for the life of me, I couldn't think what it may have been. Do you think it's because maybe they're close with the ex since you guys were both friends with them? Maybe they're like Team X. And now that you guys aren't together, but why would she invite you out there then? My ex knew about this and knew how upset I was, not knowing why they were ignoring me. She went to drop something off at their house one day and was going to ask, but she didn't have to. The dad and younger sister started saying mean things about me, referencing the things I had told the older sister about my disabilities. They said I was taking advantage of the system. They said my disabilities weren't bad enough and those programs were for the people we had taken care of in the group homes, like intellectually disabled and severely physically disabled. At this point, I had started working 6 hours a week as a companion for a disabled person because people on disability are allowed to work, and it was something I enjoyed. It gave me purpose and it allowed me to be on medical assistance for employed people with disabilities, which was more affordable than regular disability medical assistance. My ex told them I was working as much as I could and tried to explain more about my disabilities and pointed out that it's practically unheard of to get approved as quickly as I did without any initial denial, but they didn't care. They continued to say mean things about me and said they hoped that they wouldn't run into me at the upcoming Irish festival that we all used to go to together. I don't have words for the level of emotional hurt this caused. I had already lost 2 friends to the divorce, plus a goddaughter. They were primarily my ex's friends. And now I had lost 5 friends in one fell swoop, all because they were prejudiced against higher functioning disabled people. They apparently didn't stop to consider who I am as a person and consider that maybe there was more to my disability experience than they knew, because I'm not the kind of person to take advantage of the system. I'm grateful my ex told me because it had been tearing me apart not knowing. I learned what kind of people they really were, and in hindsight, I could see all the red flags that we ignored. They were the type of people who would go to church every Sunday, serve meals to homeless people on Thanksgiving, donate coats and blankets and other things to the homeless, but when it came to who they were deep down, they were judgmental and closed-minded people who lacked true empathy and compassion. Not just for me, but for others I'd heard them talk about, including other people. Adults and kids in their family, plus some of the higher functioning group home residents, the older sister's students, the mom's PCA client, etc., who struggled with disabilities, mental illness, and autism/ADHD. In the years since, I have become much more assertive and a whole lot more discerning and less tolerant of negativity when it comes to friendships. Yes, you did. I still have major trust issues because of the divorce and the way the friends treated me. I'm able to work part-time still, not nearly enough to support myself, but I love my job and I enjoy making a difference in the lives of fellow disabled people. I'm working on my trust issues and abandonment issues in therapy. It all took a back seat to dealing with grief when my dad passed, and no, I just want to hug all of you. I really do. But I'm hoping I'll be able to trust again. I have learned to accept my disabilities and live with them instead of fighting against them. I had to unlearn a lot of toxic tendencies and still haven't fully let go of the stoicism, but it's an ongoing process, and I've made a lot of gains I wouldn't have made if it weren't for all the struggles I have gone through. To anyone who needs this reminder, beware of those red flags, listen to your intuition, and know that you are worthy of kindness, compassion, respect, and love from others and from yourself. Amen. I am just sending you the biggest hug. Oh my God, I wish we could all meet and hang out. You guys, you have no idea. We're hopping on hydration station. You're welcome. Cheers. I got lemon water today. Next one is also anonymous. 'Tis a small world indeed. When I was 21, female, in the military at the time, I started dating a guy from work when I was several months pregnant. The first time he saw me naked was when I was giving birth. Poor guy. We were together for a year, but it didn't work out. Fast forward several months and I had a fling with another coworker. At my birthday bash, he brought some expensive alcohol, said it was his roommate's, I didn't know who, but since he was deployed, he wouldn't care and he would replace it. Fling means it didn't last long. Fast forward to me being 25 and several months away from separating from the military. I didn't. At the command Christmas party, the guy I had been crushing on for the last 2 years was talking with me. He'd had some liquid courage and said he had liked me for the last 2 years too. During one of our conversations, he mentioned a roommate he had that stole his expensive alcohol and never replaced it. He now has a different roommate though that he likes better. The guy that was in the delivery room with me. Shut up. It was awkward, but we made it work. We started dating December 2007, got engaged February 2008, pregnant March 2008, married July, 2008. I separated from the military March 2009, pregnant in April/May 2009, adopted a puppy in January of 2010, gave birth in February 2010, and moved from the Northeast to the South in October of 2010. After that, things were quiet until we moved back to the Northeast. My husband's new boss, my ex from the delivery room. This is insane. Like how? He is married now. Eventually, they had 2 kids and I babysat them occasionally. Whew! We have been married for 17 years now, 3 kids. He adopted my firstborn. And now we're living our next chapter since he's retired. Life is never boring. What are the odds that you guys were all intertwined in that way? And then in the end, to come back to like the original ex. Guarantee, if I said to you during that time when he saw you naked giving birth and I was like, one day you're gonna babysit his children, but you're gonna be married to someone else and so is he, you would never believe me. Next up is Anonymous. So let me tell you about the day I nearly had the cops called on me over a Pokemon card. I was walking home from the dollar store after grabbing art supplies for a project. I saw Pokemon cards on the ground and I love Pokemon, so naturally I picked them up and thought nothing of it. 2 blocks later, this woman pulled up beside me and started yelling at me saying I stole from her. She didn't specify what the items were. She said, "Whatever you stole belongs to my brother." I was very confused and told the lady I didn't steal anything. She argued and told me I did, and she said if I didn't give it back to her, she would call the police. I said, go ahead, because I knew I didn't steal anything and I was not afraid of the police. She was so adamant that I stole from her, I flashed her the Pokemon cards I picked up and without a word, turned back around and drove off in embarrassment. I'll be damned if I get in trouble over Pokemon cards. So you flashed Pokemon cards and she just drove away? I thought you stole her Pokemon cards. This whole time I'm like, you stole this woman's, but like she dropped them and you stole them. Since then, those Pokemon cards became Karen repellent, and every time I have them on me, I feel that Karens just naturally repel away from me. Also, just to mention, Joss, I've been subscribed to you for a while now. Oh. And I love your content and positivity. I am from Windsor too. I love seeing you do your thing and I think you rock. You go, Glen Coco. Oh my gosh. You're from my hometown? That's so bizarre to me. Actually, someone from my hometown came up to me when I was at the mall one time, and it's like a wild thing when in your hometown people come up to you. It's like, oh my God. Like you see me on the internet? That terrifies me. That's so fun. Thanks for being here. I hope I see you one day in Windsor. Flash your Pokemon cards at me. I might run away. Next up is coming from Bryn N. I love the name Bryn. I think I saw it on Dance Moms. 2 crazy dating stories that both began at the same restaurant. Girl, that restaurant has a curse. The WTF parts of these dates take place after the dates ended. All right. Date number 1. Back around the early 2000s, I was told by one of my coworkers, I'll refer to her as Linda, that her son, I'll call him Henry, had come in and seen me, but was too shy and afraid to approach me to ask me out. So she was wondering if she could give me his number and I would call him to see about setting up a date. I figured, why not? When I called Henry, he seemed nice and we ended up talking a couple more times before we were going to meet up for the first time for dinner and then go to a movie. We met for dinner at a well-known national chain restaurant. I don't want to name the place as nothing bad happened there. All right, so I guess it's not cursed. Anyway, we greeted each other at the restaurant. He was a nice-looking guy who was about my height. This is important later. And at dinner, he primarily talked about himself and cars, and more cars. And I primarily listened more than talked. We then went to a movie where, of course, we didn't talk much. At the end, we said some nice gestures and then parted ways. No kiss or anything, which I was good with, as I didn't really feel anything for him. We never called or spoke again. One thing to know about my coworker Linda is that she is one of those types that, as far as she is concerned, can do no wrong, even if the evidence is right in front of her. She will still say it is someone else's fault and do whatever she has to do to get out of the situation. Yell, rant, cry, etc. Fast forward about 4 months later. I was at work one day and I noticed this really tall, lanky guy standing in an area of the store I worked at that we went through to get to the back room of the store. He's probably about 5 inches taller than me. I went to the back room and came back out about 15 minutes later and the guy is still there. I went out onto the floor for about 45 minutes and came back and the guy is still there. I go to the back room and ask someone who the guy is and they said that it's Linda's son, Henry. I said, no, I went out on a date with Henry and that definitely isn't him. The guy I went out with was about my height. This guy is much taller than me. They said again that it is Henry, but I knew 100% that it was not the guy I went out on a date with, so I now have no idea who it was that I went out on a date with. I know what you all are thinking and wondering. Did I confront Linda to verify or ask who it was that I went out with? Again, Linda considers herself as someone who can do no wrong, and I had learned that it never did any good to confront her on anything. The argument that would come of it just wasn't worth it to me since I didn't even feel anything for the guy I was out with anyway. So you didn't ask Linda? Who the hell were you on a date with? What if you hit it off with that guy and then you went to go meet the parents and it wasn't Linda? Like, she would have had to tell you the truth eventually. All right, so date number 2. About a year later, I was on a dating website and connected with a guy. I'll refer to him as Don. We decided to meet up for dinner only. We decided to have dinner at the same restaurant that I went on for the date with Henry. That wasn't actually Henry. Dinner was fine. The guy seemed really nice, and when dinner was done, he asked if I wanted to come back to his place, and I felt comfortable enough with him, so I did. I followed him to his place, went inside, and sat on his couch. We talked a little bit and then he mentioned something about if I wanted to see his bedroom. Like a smooth moves. Like, oh, what are you gonna show me your bed and your dresser?
Fascinating.
I told him no, that it was actually getting late and I needed to get up early the next day. That part was true, but I also felt something was a little bit off, but didn't want to tell him that. So I left and I went home. The next day, I got a call from him, but was unable to answer it at the time because I was busy with something at work. He did leave a message, so when I got a chance, I listened to it. This is the message that he left while sounding like he was, I don't even know. Just imagine someone speaking kind of slow and barely able to get any words out. Like he had literally been suddenly woken up from a very deep sleep, but spoke that way through the whole message. I'm trying to be Dawn. Hey, this is Dawn. I had a good time last night and I'm sorry I didn't attack you last night either. If you want to get together soon, give me a call. I wasn't sure that I heard what I did, so I listened to it again, and yep, I did hear it correctly. Sorry I didn't attack you last night. I was wondering when I was reading that as Dawn, I'm like, what does that mean? Attack you? WTF, he is effing lucky he didn't as far as I was concerned. Needless to say, I never contacted him again, and I've never gone to this particular restaurant chain on a first date again and never will. Maybe the first date does have a curse with that restaurant. I've heard people say like, sorry I didn't jump on you, or sorry I didn't jump your bones. Like in high school, people said that about like making a move or hooking up. Like, sorry I didn't attack you last night. Why are you apologizing for that? That's bizarre. I'm glad you said no to the bedroom. I'm glad you went home. I'm glad you're safe. Let me know your thoughts on this. I'll see you guys in the comment section. Stay classy out there. Stay sassy.